Yes, pretty good so far. How's this me?
Good.
Your reservations?
Yeah.
Good. So this evening we'll be learning or attempting to learn the Dvar Malchus of the Rebbe of Parshas Teitzei Toshin Nunal. What according to the Kriyos that there was then in the year Toshin Nun Aleph, Parshas Teitzei came out on the 14th of El. And by us, it's only on the 9th of El. However, the Inyonim B'Teicha Inyan are all applicable. One of this manuscript. And the learning is taking place after a long break in the actual Beit Knesset of the Tzedek, the Ir Tiko, Ir Kodesh Tsfat. And this evening is Oyer Le'Ches Elul Toshin Year Shnas Toshin Pei. That's to say Thursday night, Erev Shabbat. So the Rebbe begins.
Zev Ben Leah.
Zev
Ben Leah. Zev Ben Leah. For
Shlema.
Zev Ben Leah.
Oh, yeah, but Zev Ben Leah, yeah. So the learning is Mukdash this evening to the Refuah Shlema of Dr. Zev Zelenko, whose name is Zev Ben Leah. So we'll all have in mind that the learning is Chizuk Riusei Adler Refuah Shlema Pshutei. Amen. So the Rebbe begins what I'll attempt to do this evening is sum up somewhat in detail the Sikha, and then perhaps pay towards the latter aspects a little bit more in detail. That was the shitta that we adapted prior to, and also during the time that we gave the shurim on the internet. So the Rebbe opens the Sikha with a quote from the Rambam in Hilvus of Tfilis Kolashona V'chulu, where the Rambam brings down that on every Shabbos we read the MS2 Parshas. We read the Parsha of that week, and we read the full Parsha. And then to Mincha, we begin reading the Parsha Haba, which means that on the one Shabbos, we really read from two Parshas. The one Parsha, the entire Parsha, and the second Parsha, at least 10 Pesukim, Kol HaPachas, V'chulu. So the Rebbe says that indicates that there must be some definite connection between the two. Since the both of those parshas are read on the same Shabbos, then it's to be expected that they have a connection. So the Rebbe says this week we read two parshas where it would appear at first glance that not only they don't have any connection so much, but they would appear to be like, as it were, opposites, one to the other. And that begins in the name. That begins in the actual name of the two Sedras. What we have a cloud that the Rebbe brings many times, that the name of a Sedra is not just a sort of label or a usage of term of the first words of the opening of the Parsha, but it indicates the token, the token pnimi of the whole Parsha. So that means that our Parsha is Teitzei. What Teitzei means to go out. And either the Parsha that we begin reading at Mincha is Tovoi. And Tovoi means to come in. So that would indicate at just first glance that there's like two opposite tenues altogether. But that's Indian of going out, and that's an Indian of entering and coming in. And the Rebbe said, particularly if we examine a little more in detail, then we notice that Teitzei doesn't mean you just step out your front door or something, but Teitzei la milchamo al oyabecho, that you're going out to war on your enemies. Now, going out to war is not by any means a restful way of going out, but it's a very demanding, and there's a lot of laws connected with it. Like the Rambam brings that you mustn't allow the fear of the enemy to overcome you, and you have to be, the soldier has to teach himself to think only of what he's doing and not of his family and his friends and his loved ones, etc. So that going out to Muhammad is not a easy going out at all. It's a very heavy demand. The ilo tavoy el ha'oretz means that you're coming in, and then we say not only you're going to come into the land, but yoshavta yorashta oisova yoshavta bo. You're going to take it over, and you're going to sit comfortably in the land. But that indicates the idea of what we call his yashvas, like a settlement, which is the opposite, and almost like a state of oineg, which is the very opposite of going out to war. Going out to war is a very sharp and demanding to the point of sakonas chayim chulu. And so, therefore, says the Rebbe, that would tend to indicate that they are two very opposite, even in their Torah. And especially that we see that the Indian of Teitzei l'milchama means going out to fight somebody who is describable as oyevecho. He is your hadikot managid. There's even a state of somebody who's like an opposing figure, somebody who's working against you. The ilal kisove el ha'oretz, that tends to indicate that everything is in a state of shalom, and there's nobody against you, and you come in and you settle, and you have settled in the land. Then they begin different inyanim, led by the Indian of Bikudim, which we'll see. It also indicates the idea of the oinig, of a person getting his first fruits after he's already well settled in the land. different completely to the concept of going out to fight war. Therefore, the Rebbe said that this comes to a even deeper aspect if we consider that Teitzei Milchama would tend to indicate the idea of a field of battle, and that would indicate the Zman of the Golas, when Yidden are not in the Eretz Israel, and they're not in the base of Mikdash. So then everything is like a fight and a struggle to preserve the kiyum of Torah and mitzvahs, and b'meila the kiyum of Kol Klal Yisrael. Masha'enkein Kisovei would tend to indicate what's going to be in the Geula Shlema, the complete and final Geula, that everybody's going to come into Eretz Israel, Kisovei, indicatory of the ultimate Shlemas, which will be in the Geula Shlema. So that's even kind of further and deeper aspect of the difference. That's talking Be'ika, a time when Yidden are not Arab Muslim, they're not in their own country, and they're not in the base of Midah. That's the Indian of Teitzei. The Ilu Kisova indicates when they will return with Moshiach Tzidkenu, Zman Geula Shlema, they'll come back into Eretz Israel. So that is the big lead-in with the Rebbe draws the difference, which would appear to be a very essential difference, and as we pointed out in detail, between the two Parshas. And yet, nonetheless, according to the way the Rambam reckons out, that they occur on the same Shabbos, and they occur without any essential change in the meantime. All that's happened is that a few hours of the Shabbos have gone by, and then Yidden are already reading the second Parsha, which all tends to indicate two complete opposites, nonetheless meeting a common ground, or having as it were, a perfection of some connection together. So the Rebbe said, it becomes a little bit more deeper, the whole question, the whole sort of difference between them, in that if we look at the concept of going in to Eretz Israel, the entering, whether it be at the time of the Geula Shlema, or the first time that it went into Eretz Israel, or that would tend to indicate what we describe as the ultimate schar, the ultimate paying of reward on the part of the Eivashter for all the Avodah of Yidden, especially it will say that Teitzei is indicatory of the Zman HaKodesh. Of a method that going into Eretz Israel, well, that indicates like the ultimate sachar and reward which Hashem will pay to the Jewish people when the Geula Shlema comes, and that will be embodied together with the entrance into Eretz Israel. And the Rebbe finds a similarity to this whole concept, in that at that particular time, they were learning Pirkei Avos in a way that they were learning two Prokim already. I think we also be doing that. And they were learning on that Shabbos, they were learning Perek Aleph and Perek Beis on that particular Shabbos. So the Rebbe said that we find this type of difference between the two chapters of Pirkei Avos. The first chapter begins with Moshe Kibbel Torah Misinai, Masaru Yeshua, Yeshua Zakanim, and then the Mishnah immediately goes ahead and says, Hamidu Talmidim Harbe. You have to make sure that you have many Talmidim that you will be teaching them. So that all tends to indicate that you have to be a makabel, you have to take the Torah makabel, and you have to be mishtadel to give it over to all you have to make a great effort to give it over to all the Talmidim Harvey that you're going to stand up. Well, if he said that's an avoider, rather, and involves the idea of what we call avoider Hashem, but there is hishtadlus v'chulu. The second parak finishes with the expression v'da the schar of the tzaddikim is liyosit lovei. You should know that the schar that the tzaddikim are going to be makabel, or that's only going to be after Moshiach comes, and Bika after Tchias Amazing. That would tend to indicate that the whole idea of when you go into liyosit lovei, Alidei Moshiach, and particularly Tchias Amazing, that's when you get the reward, the concept of Sachar. Of the either together with that, yet before and prior to that, you have to have the Indian of a Ribu Yishtadlus to be Makabel, the Torah, and to give it over to many Talmidim, but that's the Indian of a Voida, to media, the Ilo Matan Schoran, Shal Tzadikim, seems to be talking the Achrei Hakol. It's the same basic nuance that we find in Teitzei, which is war and struggle and effort, and Ilo, Kisova, Yavoret, indicates the coming back into Eretz Israel, Bezman Hagula Shleima. Over the Rebbe said, we need to understand how does that fit in with another thing which is taught to us openly in the Parsha, that there's a mitzvah in Parshas Teitzei that if you hire workers to do work for you, to do a certain work according to the hours of the day, you're not paying them to do a job, but you're paying them to work for you for so many hours, meaning you're paying them by the hour. Then you have to be very careful. On the day that he does the work, you have to give him his pay. You're not allowed to delay the pay. And just before that, the Rebbe brings in a big footnote. But just before that, there's another mitzvah in the Torah where we are told that if you have a kerem or orchard or something like that, and you bring in workers to pick the fruits, then they are allowed for their pure necessity. If they're hungry or they need something to give them power to work further, then they're allowed to take from the fruits according to what they will fairly need. They're allowed to take from the fruit. So the Rebbe said that's also like a type of payment that is occurring immediately on the spot. But it's just more openly stated, that you must pay. As Amela said, the Rebbe, if that's the case, how does the Abish to keep that here with us, that we're working in the Golas Teitzei and the reward is only going to be when we go in the Gula Shleima, and that will be the beginning of the reward. And then the Alter Rebbe tells us that after Moshiach and the base of Tchias Amazim, there's going to be what we call Elef HaShvi, and it's going to be an even higher type of reward. So how does that all fit in? But the fact it would appear that during Teitzei, the time of the Golas, how does he pay you? It would appear you have to get your reward every day that you work hard, and you're like a poyo, the Shem is hired to do his work. Well, really, you should be getting paid the sachar. Why do you have to wait for the sachar? So the Rebbe now goes into a fascinating, what we might call analysis of the whole idea of a sachar that you get as a Jew and Baclau to the whole idea of paying somebody a shachar, paying him reward, yeah, or paying him for what he does. So the Rebbe said that Yidden have come down into this world and they have to serve the Eibishter according to the matzah. The Neshamas come down into the world. And is it at all shy to say that you're not obliged to do what you have to do? You have to do a Torah mitzvahs, and you have to, purify your animal soul, your nefesh habahamis, and you have to purify and improve yourself. And that's an obligation. That's a shiur that every yid has. Of a matter, something that you're mechuyev anyway, you have to do anyway. You don't get paid for that because you're mechuyev anyway to do it. And since you're mechuyev to do it, what sort of pay do you get? And especially that we find that the Yidden are called by the Eibishter his servants. Ki li b'nei Yisrael avodim avodai. They are servants and they're my servants. So the Rebbe said, just imagine a servant. He's bound up completely to his master. He doesn't get any pay. He doesn't get any reward. The maximum that the master has to give an eved, he has to give him what he needs to eat and drink it to keep himself going and to look after his essential preservation of his basic materials. But he doesn't pay, a master doesn't pay an eved. An eved is bound up completely in a way that he doesn't get paid. So the Rebbe said in Cain, we are, on the one hand, we do Torah mitzvah, we're obliged to do it. And secondly, we are called avodim, that the whole way we relate to Hashem in our keeping of Torah mitzvahs, it's an inyan to stress and to be like the whole idea of an eved. And an eved doesn't get paid. So what's this whole idea of schar, and especially that Hashem has to pay you every day, as it were, the yomai, titein schore, he's got to pay you the whole time. So how does that fit in? And where do we see that Hashem is mekayim that mitzvah? But first of all, we need to understand how come that he has to give you a sachar. So the answer, the Rebbe goes in to a most amazing thing. And it's a very profound, it's one of the big profundities in the Dvar Malchus. So I'll try to get it over in a way that will be miskabel, and that's like this. That we first all have to look at what Rashi says. The Rashi says that ki Teitzei la melchama when you're going out to war on your, Rashi said, what sort of war are we talking about? So Rashi says immediately, the milchemes harushus akosu medaber. That we're talking here about what's called a war of permission. We're not talking about the war of conquering the 7 nations in order to go into Israel. No, we're talking about what's called a war that didn't have decided that they want to go out and conquer other areas and take them under their control. But they're not mechuyev to do that. It's a milchemes ha-reshut. And therefore the law is that if you see a beautiful woman and everything, that's the innovations, your past toya, but that's only shot by a milchemes reshut. Because by the nations in Eretz Yisrael, the 7 nations, you're obliged to completely destroy them. So the Rebbe says, why is it that Rashi begins the whole Parsha with that expression, Melchemes HaReshus? That tends to indicate that you're fighting a war that you're not really obliged to do that. And so perhaps all the other Ramazim which are connected with this going out to war, are fighting against the Yetzer Hara and everything. All that is connected with the concept that we're talking here about a war which is only a permission, it's a reshut. So the Rebbe said, let's examine the whole situation of what is a Jew, what is a Yid, what is he doing here, Lamata? So he said, a Yid comes down here, Lamata, into this world after leaving a tremendously elevated, high state. And that is the expression, ki Teitzei. When a Yid comes down into this world, he's going out altogether and leaving behind a tremendous elevation that he has prior to his coming down. And ad kidei kach, we find that Yisrael, Kuchabriku, Kul Echad, that the Eibishter and Yidden are absolutely one thing until it becomes brought in Drush Exodus that the Eibishter's essence and the Yidden are all, as it were, one thing. And Yidden are Kaviyotl, Bonim of the Eibishter, meaning that they are mamish, as it were, an essential part of the etzem of a Kodesh Baruch. But ad kidei kach, it's like that there's a medrash in Medrash Roots, where the medrash tells us that the Eibishter, before he created the world, he asked, first of all, somebody, he took advice, as it were, from somebody, or he took an Eitzah, let's put it that way. Is it worthwhile and is it proper to go ahead with the creation of the world? Who did he do that with, the Eibishter? He asked the neshamas of the tzaddikim, which means that even before the world, you already had neshamas of tzaddikim. And that's what the Gemara tells us in Masechet Pesachim, that Yisrael, Kodmu, the Kol Dover, the most primordial of all things is Yidden. They're primordial, meaning that they were there long before the creation of the world. And the Eibishter asked them, what do they say? Is it worthwhile to create the world? And it's written that the neshamas of the tzaddikim, they said that you should create the world. They gave the Eibishter, as it were, the how do you call it, the motivation, kabiyoko, as much as we can say such a thing, to create the world. So it comes out of that the whole world and the whole existence of the world has got a certain dependence in the primordial state of the Jewish soul, that it was in such a level that Hashem, as it were, asked all the Jewish souls, and Amei Kulam Tzadikim, Ali Yidna Tzadikim, as it were, all the souls, they decided whether the world's going to be or not. So it comes out the Yidden, in a way, are beyond and, how do you call it, completely, how would we say, elevated in a way that they don't really have to do with the world. On the contrary, they are completely beyond it, and they gave the Eitzah to create the world. So he said that they're coming down into the world, they're not obliged to come down into the world. It's like coming down in the form of a reshus. How do you call it? They're not mukhrach to do it because of their unbelievably high state. They come down purely because they took on themselves to come down. In the shoyrish of how Yidden relate to this whole world and their whole coming down into the world, nobody obliged them to do it. It's like a reshus. Therefore, the whole war that they have down here is a Mochemes Reshus. It's not a obligatory war. They, as it were, took on themselves. How does that make sense with what we said before, that the Yidden are slaves? They're avodim, and they have to do the work. Yeah, how does that fit together? If they don't, because they're really there mitzad that they decided, and it was an inif and reshus, and therefore the whole war is on reshus. How does that fit in with the fact that they are in effect avodim, and they have to do it all, and they have to keep all the Torah mitzvahs, also Shiur. Yeah, how does those two things come together? So the Rebbe said they come together perfectly. Ibapnimiyas uba'atzmiyas. A yid is, how do you call it? He is Lamaila from the world. And his whole entry into this whole struggle is Rashuz. He's not Mechuyah. He came down because he decided that he was going to undertake that struggle. However, the purpose of the Eibishter in the creation of the world is to make a dira loy is bara b'taktoinim. Hashem wanted, and it's a taiva on the part of Hashem, nisava, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, liyos loy dira b'taktoinim, or that's a, how do you call it, a etzem tika taiva, kavyon, a rotzen atzmi, by Hashem that he wants, a dira b'taktoinim. So you didn't say, okay, we'll make you the dira b'taktoinim. Reshus. However, comes along on Hashem and he says, but listen, I don't want the world should be the way you guys are. You guys are very high. You're beyond the world altogether. I want the dira that I want here, Lamata. I want taktoinim to make it. I could make myself a dira b'taktoinim, but I want that the very taktoinim, they should make the dira, which means that you've got to be a taktoin, and you've got to do it the way taktoinim do it. Mitzad that, you've got to come down into the world, and you've got to be part of the world, and you've got to be obliged to do it like ever. You've got to be tied to the job, which comes out that that's not really the emes of mahus of Yidden. The emes of pnimius of Yidden demands that they have shachar. If they decided to come down on their own, due to them a reward. Both things are true. On the one hand, it's due to them a tremendous reward. On the other hand, they are obliged to do it because Hashem wants the dira should be mitzad the taktoinim, and people who are actually in the taktoinim, mamish, and the Yidden are not like that, but they have to become that way. However, we notice about every year that even though he's busy doing the hard work like a Eved, we notice about him that there's something unusual about a Yid. And therefore the Alter Rebbe summed it all up, and he said, it doesn't matter who you are or what sort of Yid you are, but a Yid, not he can and not he wants to be separate from Atzma Saint Sof, from the very essence of the Eibashter. He doesn't want to be, and he can't be separated, no matter who he is, even if he's not doing what he should. So the Rebbe said that indicates the deep inner reshus of Yidden, that they didn't have to get involved in all this beklal. They came down of their own will. Therefore, there's something in a Yid which always lifts him up beyond the whole. And Yesh Lema, it occurred to me that one can say on that basis what the Rebbe said, well, that's the secret of what they call Jewish survival. You know, take all the generations what Yidden have been through, Rahman and son, and all the years that are going, yet Yidden are still, they're still strong and coming back for more. You know, how you got Yidden holding out, and even under the present crazy situation of Yiddishkeit is going to win through, you understand? There's going to be didon notza of a mela. Where does all that come from? That comes from the fact that the Yidden didn't actually go down into this whole thing as a Shiur. They went down for Shiur. After they're already here, Sam said, listen, I got to have the dira mitzad, the taktoinim. You guys have got to become taktoinim. So the Yidden say, okay. So they get themselves involved in a a very difficult situation, which is not really what they really, the Panemius, came down for, or in a way, that's not the ultimate reason why they came down. But Mamela said that according to that, Hashem has to pay them sachar. But for that, what they got to do it outside ever, that's he doesn't necessarily pay sachar for that. But the fact that they do it without their panemius, what they really are, for that he has to pay sachar. So he said, how does the average to pay every day? He's supposed to give you sachar. Every day he's supposed to pay you a fat reward. I don't notice anybody being particularly excited about that.
Yeah.
But that's the situation. You can sort of say to Hashem, you got to pay up. You can't leave me like that. There's got to be the daily reward. So it comes from the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, if you look in Tanya, then you find the answer. Yeah, you just have to look in Tanya. And what does the Alter Rebbe say in Tanya? The Alter Rebbe says that the whole world was only created because of Hashem's taiva. Mainly you've got to do the job because you're down here in this world. That's a Shiur and all. However, the next period, the Alter Rebbe says that the Eibishter gives us schar. And he said, what is the schar? The schar is what the Mishnah says. In the Perek Beis, the Mishnah says that schar mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. That the schar of the mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. Not the pshat schar mitzvah is another mitzvah. That's also true. Of a schar mitzvah means that the schar for the mitzvah is the mitzvah. So what is that? So the Alter Rebbe said that when you do a mitzvah, you bring down Oyer Ein Sof into the world. Every mitzvah that you do, you bring down a gilui of Oyer Ein Sof into the world. Of a meidler, you should have a tremendous pocketfuls of Oyer Ein Sof, or you're doing everyday mitzvahs, and you bring down gilui Oyer Ein Sof into the world. So what is the answer? You're putting it all away in a safe. And the Yosef, when Moshiach comes, they're going to open the safe, and then all the gilui will be there. Nimtza, that you get your reward, but in a way you don't. You get it, you bring it down into the world, but you're only going to actually open it up and have it in your pocket, Kipshutei, after Moshiach will come. So that's the a little bit of almost like a slight anticlimax. Ain't like another year Mr. Pays, but in a way he sort of didn't. He didn't actually pay you, He did, but he didn't. You got it, but you didn't get it. So you got it, but so you know what the Rebbe says? He says an amazing thing about that. The Rebbe says that it's put in a safe, all this oil and so that you bring down to every mitzvah, and that's the schar, and it comes down into the world, and it's put into a safe. But you might say, yeah, but I don't open the safe, the safe's locked, and it's got all this wonderful stuff inside it. So the Rebbe says, no, you have the key, and you can open the safe any minute that you want. So Yid will say, wait a minute, I can open any minute I want. So the Rebbe said, yeah, that every minute a Yid has got capacity to bring Mashiach. Every moment, every moment you have to be ready and wanting to bring Mashiach. You guys realize what that is? Of a mela, every moment you have the ability to open the safe. So you do have it. You don't have it, but you do. It's all up to you. Yeah. So you say, oh, no good. I got no time to bring Mashiach today, maybe tomorrow. No, you got to say, yeah, beyond my titain schore, I want my schar, going. I want food at this moment. I should have said okay. Okay, bring Mashiach now. Yeah. And that's the Indian. We want Mashiach now. That's the whole Indian. So we should have the Sachar. When Mashiach will come, then for sure you're going to have the Sachar. Then you're going to get it. That's good. Full payment. Yeah. And then after that, in the anniversary, there's going to be an even higher Sachar. Shaloi be'erev, or that's the Alter Rebbe himself in the little Hagor in Perek Lamed Vav in Tanya. But that's already that's a further Inyan. But that's all based on the fact that didn't really need to come down. They came down for Melchemed's Rishus, like Rashi said. And therefore, it comes to us that, so you might say, well, listen, that's a pretty hard and straining sort of job that you've given us. You put us in this very, very difficult world and you say it's a fight, it's a war. Yeah, and you say that every moment's going to bring Moshiach. How is that? Where do I get? So he said that's what the Parsha Kisove teaches. What Kisove means that you're already going in the Guru Shlema, and you're coming into Eretz Yisrael in the way of Ityashvut, settlement and Manucha. That means that even in the war, even in the hard war, the way it's got to be done is B'Yishuv Adas and Bahar Chover. In other words, that Hashem gives you koyach, that even when you're involved in the war, you can do it B'Yishuv Adas and B'Simcha and B'Shashvas, and He will give you the seichel to say, I want to bring Mashiach now. I'm going to open my safe and get my reward. Keep shooting on the spot. He said that the two Parshas really support one the other, and Sove is like a pure when you get to Teitzei. How is Teitzei going to be carried out? And what is the ultimate reward that you get for the Teitzei when you will come into Eretz Yisrael forever, Islamite, Bisman HaMashiach. Yeah? But until then, the Eibishter pays you the whole time. It's just that you don't have it, mamish mamish in your hand. You open the safe. You understand? Hey, so you can say, well, but it's still a little bit of a anti-climax. So we have to say that the schar mitzvah does have an effect on you. You don't bring down that oil and it just goes entirely into our sight. But we have to say that schar mitzvah, that the schar of the mitzvah is the mitzvah, meaning it does affect you, and therefore it's brought down in Drushim. From the Rebbeim, and particularly the Reb Marash writes in a place that when you bring down that error itself, even though it's not the absolute giloi, but it does have a big effect on your life. And there's a big difference between if you do the mitzvah or you didn't do it, on you personally. It affects you. And that's one of the union that we find, that when you do a mitzvah, the shleimas, you have a guardianship that guards you. There's a shmirah, the holy guardianship that's put on a person who does mitzvah. There is a certain schar of the mitzvah, and that's how the Eibishter keeps his obligation to pay you day by day. And when you come in to Eretz Yisrael, the Gula Shlema, well, everybody has the ability to cause that to happen if he really wants. Then you're going to get it completely open in your hand. And after that, there'll be, after Tchias HaMesim, then there'll be this unbelievably even higher Sachar. That's basically the picture that the Rebbe creates for it. Is nimta that in this manner, God in the last regoyim before Mashiach comes, we're going to be prepared for. It's a war, There's still a demand that you've got to, you've got to fight capably the war. But you have inside you a very profound and deep union which lifts you beyond the whole thing. And therefore, that gives you a knowledge that really you don't have any, enemies. They only appear to be enemies. And therefore, the Pasuk uses the expression, Teitzei milchama al oyevecha. You're right from the going out, you're on top of al oyevecha. You're on top of it. Yeah, right from the very beginning, because you know, mitzat your pnimius, that you're higher and beyond this whole thing. If you will look mitzat what your pnimius is, you will realize that really there's no oyevecha, there's no real. It just appears that way. But if you are ma'ira, the pnimius of what a yid is, like we said before, that the whole thing's only a rashut, mitzat that pnimius, and the neshama, and that's one of the pirushim in Yafas Toya. The beautiful woman is the pnimius of the neshama of a meilan, but that gives the koyak to overcome and be al oyevecha. Of a meilan, with that the Rebbe completes the whole. See how we're dealing with the unified Elul, and he says that Elul is like the completion of the Aveda of the year which has gone by, and the preparation for the new year. So in a way, we look and we benefit, as it were, from all the sachar that the Eibishter is paying us for everything we've done, and the taking on mitzad that pnimius of a year. He takes on himself when he get to the year to come, also with a hidden, strong inspiration to face. And therefore, Be'ez Hashem, next week, the Rebbe deals with certain dates that occur in El, that have to do with the marriage of the Rebbeim and all that. But we're not going to have that in this coming week. Well, in a way, we are. In this coming week, we will meet up with them. And that's Yud Aleph. That's the Yom Nisuin, Yud Aleph of Yom Nisuin, the Rebbe Rashab. And Yud Gimel is the Yom Nisuin of the Friedrich Rebbe. And thanks. And Tsfat is the day of the founding of the Shiur Teitzei. And Yud Dalet, that's the day before. That's everything. Tsfat, all those days, pretty, one after the other, they are very big days. So the point being that a Nisuyan is a marriage, well, that indicates a yivud, a tremendous eid ratzon. So the Rebbe says that when a Nasi B'Yisrael gets married, then that has a tremendous significance for the whole generation. And so he develops on that Indian, and he mentions the marriage of the Rebbe Rashab and the Friedrich Rebbe, and then he mentions briefly the whole Indian of Yeshiva's Teitzei Tmimim. But I think next Thursday night, when we'll Be'ez Hashem, I think it'll already be Thursday. By then, it'll be running into Tsfat. I think Tsfat comes out Erev Shabbat. But we'll be able to deal with that in more detail, Be'ez Hashem, in the coming class. And we'll see the great significance of the founding of Teitzei when we get to the Rebbe sees it as a key factor in the development of all the none that have to do with the Gurlish life. And we'll talk about that more in detail, Be'ez Hashem. So there we are. That's pretty much a comprehensive summary of this wondrous Sikha, and Hashem should give us that we realize how tremendously high Shiur is, and how the fact that we have a very profound elevation beyond the whole creation, which is called the idea of Malchus Rishus, but at the same time we've allowed ourselves to become committed because Dear Eloi is borrowed Tachtoin. Of the Mela Hashem should grant that all the retainers, including the Avis's Rotzen, that he wants a Dira, the Tachtoinim, and our Rotzen, that we want the Emerson Dira, the Tachtoinim. The Mashiach, and it's amazing, as take of Miyad, Kain Tielano, Be'ez Hashem. A very long time, even when Yechia Dinayno, Marayno, Rabbeinu, Melech Mashiach, Leilom Bek. Chaim. Benji, what did you over there? You gotta have a glass of lead. Have a glass. Chaim. I just want to, we always have a little brief upbringing at the end of it. So since I'm not informed, it's months since I've actually, when Hashem appeared in this way, I still got to watch the balance a little bit. But however, it's a very big secret, what Rashi says, that the whole war under discussion in the beginning of the Parsha and the Cloud, the whole Parsha, is a Malchus Rishus. It's a war. And so a way of explaining that is that the eco war that you have with yourself is in the Divrei Rishus, because it's well known by Tzedek Chabad, the famous Pitgam, that they used to say that a thing which is forbidden in the Torah, we're not talking about that, that's forbidden anyway. Yeah. No, that which is permitted, the Divrei Rishus, that which is permitted to us, you don't need it. In Yiddish, das was mir tun ist, Weisman as mir tun ist. Das was mir mag, darf man. That what you're allowed, you don't necessarily need it. Now that doesn't mean that you don't have to look after your health. What is essential for your benefit of your preserving your health, we're not talking about that. But just, making a whole healthy good. Basic out of the Divrei Rishus, that's the Ika Milchoma. You have to fight. And therefore there's a famous, another famous Pizgom that I heard once in the Fabringen from the Rebbe, where the Frierdiker Rebbe said that there's one form of stealing which is permitted. So everybody's eyes bulge out. They say, how can stealing be permitted? So the Rebbe Ayat said that you're allowed to opgazlenen from the Divrei Rishus. You're allowed to steal from the Divrei Rishus. meaning that what you're allowed to do and that what is okay to do, and that what the goof wants to do and everything. It's permitted to steal that away from him. It's permitted to take a bit of that time and a bit of that absolute devotion to the Divrei Rishus and to give that away to the poor, to give it away to the Nefesh Keys and to all the good things. So you're allowed to steal, take away from the Divrei Rishus and give it to the Nefesh Keys, which is called a Yeled Mishken, for the poor people. That's a form of stealing which is permitted. And that's what Rashi is, Maramas, B'Milchemes HaReshut, of course, in Medaber. The main war in life is with the Divrei Reshut, with the things which are permitted. Well, that's where the Iker stumbling of the man occurs. I said, what's anyway permitted? So let's have a good time. So the teaching of Tzedek is that you have to steal away from those issues. You're allowed to steal a bit from that and give it away to Inyoni Kedusha. And the same is with another Pirush in or Rosh Hashanah, had it called acronym in Elul, not just ani l'doidi v'doidi li, but ish l'reyehu u'matonas lo evyoini. But that's a pasuk in the Megillah. But that means one person to another and gifts to the poor. And so what does one person to another mean? That you could have time for the other guy. It's got to bother you and what's happening with the other guy? So you can say, but wait a minute, I'm busy, I got all my own things going. I just can't, I'm sorry, I can't fit in the other guy. And therefore you have to steal away and you have to make war with your own feelings and your own, how we call it, involvement, and your own, as it were, craze with what you think you need. And that's very big letters by you, what I need and what's for me. You've got to be prepared to put all that aside a bit and have time for the other person. That's the pshat. Ish l'riyahu. That's Aleph Lam. Matonis le'yoinim. You've got to be able to give away in the form of not expecting reward. Emerson, matona, to somebody that he's a evyoin. What evyoin means that he does have genuine need. You can say, well, I've also got genuine need. Yeah, you will make it. Yes, one way. Oh, but what do you know about the other guy? Maybe he really is in a very, very needy situation. And he can't even get it enough into work. So you've got to be able to overlook a little bit. You've got to be able to overlook a little bit. You follow? Your own Inyane Rishus and devoted to Matonis Lo Evgainim. And it's very fascinating that a lot of people, we think, oh, he's not an Evian. So the word Evian means that he's to'er. He really does need. It could be there's a certain area of his life that you don't know anything about. Or you just hear about it and you don't really react sufficiently significantly to the Inyan. You've got to be able to hear what's really happening with the other guy. And only by stealing away from your own reshus and devoting it to the other person, well then you're Mekayim the mitzvah of the after the Rayat or Kamoicha. Because Kamoicha, you've got a big one. It's like, oh yeah, what I need. But to do that for the sake of the other guy, that's a piece of work. And therefore, Rashi calls it Melchemes Harushut. It's a war against your own craze with your own need. You follow? Avamela, that's what it's brought down in Sforim. Very interesting. They bring another remez to the Indian from Elul, and they say that Elul makes two words, loy, loy. Loy mita aleph and loy mita avo. Elul is built of those four letters. And for example, you meet up with it in the Mizmor L'Soida. Every day you say, loy anachnu amai. So that's got a ksiv and a kri. It's got the way it's written and the way it's read. The way it's written is with the aleph, and the way it's read is with the avo. And so it is in one or two other places similar to that. Of Amela come along the Holy Sforim, and they say that if you're Mekayim, the loy, you're able to say no to yourself. Yeah. And then loy, Kodesh Baruch Hu gives you a lot. Then you will get what is Be'emes duty. Loy mitavo, not loy mitavo. In other words, to your own tithers and your own Mishagasan, and everybody knows what's happening with himself, that you've got to be able to say, I'm sorry, look, without and that is goyim, that then loy mitavo, then Hashem gives you everything in it. You follow? And then you become an emes of Makabel, not just a Makabel that you're sleeping the whole time, but you become a Makabel because it's due to you. You follow? Magilecha, because you're able to say, Lo, Mita'ala. I think that's a very, even though I didn't find that in Sifrei Lubavitch, but it's a Doha Yofi, that particular Pisgon. And it's very applicable to the whole concept of Elul. What the Rebbe says, you got to make a cheshbon and nefesh, and it's got to be a emes of cheshbon, not just being Yetzer with making a quick run through about what you did or you didn't do, but really the emes going in and understanding, appreciating where you were nikshah, what you could do to make better. And particularly, like we said, Beinodim Chaverei, how even in your own family and even in your home life, you could possibly be better than you. What did you do, Simcha? Yeah, we finished with. We'll just be rustling the whole season. Anyway, good to see you. This guy. These atonements for these are very old. Simcha will. Simcha.
Yes, sir.
What have you been? Where have you been?
Pardon?
Huh? Very
Where are
good.
you?
Anyway,
I was like around the house
you're staying for Shabbos?
They had LSD. Around Malchus in America, where he started out, they had LST, Lubavitch Standard Time. We might be big in Mashiach, we might be big in Gula, but Sha'on.
I'm sorry, I can't hear, but it sounds good.
I'm here for a short amount of time. I can visit you, read a few other things. What can I do?
Anyway,
hunting ground.
Whatever, it should be with a tzlacha.
Pardon?
It should be with a tzlacha gedolim uflogas. It's great and exaggerated hatzlacha. Avamela L'chaim, and the Mela, therefore Elul has also got a Rosh Hashanah, a Shiur, La'avaya, Yemru Lema, how does it go? Something to do with the Shiur. There's also a Rosh Hashanah. And that's got to do with the Inyan of Mashiach. That's what we're going to sing. Ki Sove, when you'll be going in. But that's going to be the Rosh Hashanah of Elul. Yeah, Shiur La'avaya, or Yemru, something from the Shiur Sayam. Or that's the Shiur Agiyula of Amela. If will be Mekayim, the Ish Leviyahu, of Matonis Levyanim, the Shleimas. But that'll give us koyach for the Ani Ladoidi Li. of Amira Doidili means that the Atmas Ein Tov, he recognizes where you really hold Milchemes HaReshut. You're really higher than the whole world. And Doidili comes down and he unites. Doidili, yeah? He unites with that aspect of me, and he gives me the koyach to be Menateyach, all the Dvarim ability of Kol HaDvarim HaMapalbelim and all the Inyanim that gives you the koyach to be Menateyach. And Mamela, then we'll all be Mekabel, the Pnei Rebbe, and we'll all be able to sing our Shiur Lavaya, but you exactly how it goes. We'll all sing the Shiur Sayam, Be'emes Lamita in the Gula, Lamita Svashleim. Mamela, be well, guys, and Chaim. And Hashem should help us that when we say the David Hashem Oire V'Yishi, we should realize that there are certain great authorities that they don't say, the David Oire V'Yishi. However, the Alter Rebbe brings it in Siddur, and there's also Maimorim on Maimorim Siddur from the Rebbeim. So it's one of the whole reasons that we say that Mizmor is that we want to get to the Pasuk L'chol Maldibi Bat Shulchana. But if you just said that Pasuk, then it's worthwhile, the whole. If you got that far, that's good. The whole reason why we say this whole Mizmor is to get to that Pasuk. But unknown number. It's the Mela, that's the whole Inyan, is a Mela. What does it mean? In your shlichus, bringing the Abish to shlichus, my heart says to me, I have to look for the pneumias of the Abish. I have to see a search for the pneumias, Bakshu Fanai, Avamela Esponercha Havaya, Avakej, and your heart answers and said, yes, Einochanami, that's what I will do. I will look for the pneumia. If you look for the pneumias, then you'll find what we learned tonight in the Rebbe Tzedek, Milchemes HaReshut, that really you guys came from very, all of us together, we all came from a very, very high level. Like Gabi said, it's all Reshus. We're not Machuyev Beklal, and yet nonetheless, we came down and we took on ourselves this amazing task of making the dear Lord's brother for Teitzei. And therefore, nothing can get in the way of you. They are radical. Because on the one hand, they're not Machuyev in the whole Union. Mitzad Shani, they came down with their Reshut, with their own will. They came down and they committed themselves like an Eved to doing what the Eved said. Well, that's a very amazing thing. That's what you might call, that's the highest form of nobility. To get yourself committed absolutely to something that you didn't really need to get involved in. But nonetheless, you committed yourself. And you become involved. So then you get both milas. You get a mila of Einam Mitzvah in a way, but you get the mila also of being commanded. Both of them together. Hashem should help us, and He should give us a lot of koyach and a lot of simcha, and a lot of gesund, and a lot of emes, had he good best gesund in Yiddish, the best good health, and we'll all go with the Mashiach flag, if I may say so, to meet the Rebbe B'Poel Mamish, in the Gula Mitzvah Vashley.
Fine, bro.
Chaim.